So what is universal design for learning, for those of you new to this concept? This term refers to the concept of making environments, products, or buildings accessible to the greatest number of people possible. All users may benefit from accommodations made for those experiencing barriers to access. For example, closed captions were designed to assist those with hearing impairments, but many individuals without a disability may utilize this feature when watching a video, such as in a noisy environment. So an application of universal design in the educational setting is Universal Design for Learning, or UDL. And it was developed by an organization called CAST. Among the greatest benefits of universal design in instruction is that the process of accommodating students with different needs provides alternative pathways to learning for all students. This allows all the students to participate in ways that draw upon their individual strengths. Eliminating barriers in how students interact with primary sources enables greater engagement with the materials themselves because it eliminates the challenges that may come when working with specific modalities outside of a student's strengths. And studies have shown that when students are in courses that integrate universal design principles, they've demonstrated improved perceptions of the course, increased satisfaction, increased social presence, and enhanced success. So a lot of the literature on universal design in higher education focuses on semester-length courses, but it can also be applied to the one-shot model that many of us use in our instruction. So UDL focuses on three main principles: providing multiple means of engagement, multiple means of representation, and multiple means of action and expression. I've included here a chart from the CAST website that lays out the different pathways to provide these multiple means of engagement, representation, and action. The CAST website and the organization's publications are really a wonderful resource if you're just getting started on your UDL journey. And this chart is available at udlguides.cast.org. And there is a link to this slide deck in the notes document for this session. In what's not the best timing I've ever had, the folks over at CAST actually released the newest version of their UDL guidelines, UDL 3.0, about an hour ago. I took a quick look at them, and the major principles and themes remain the same. There's just been some updating to the language used in the individual objectives to make the guidelines more learner-centric and inclusive. So let's dive into each of these principles a little bit more. Multiple means of engagement means providing students with different pathways to engage with the materials, which can result in increased motivation and sustained effort. One way to provide multiple means of engagement is have students personally select items from a curated selection of work during an interactive instruction session. Having a strong interest in like an individual item can allow for them to have deeper engagement. Another option, the one that might require additional preparation by the instructor, is have students use the library catalog or your finding aid database or whatever other discovery tool to identify materials of interest ahead of the session. Self-selection of a manuscript or an artifact can facilitate the student's investment in the class activity. Another option would be to allow for students to work solo, in partners, or in small groups. We all have our preferred collaboration styles, and allowing students to work alone or together based on their personal preference is an easy way to encourage students to engage with class in the way that works best for them. So multiple means of representation. When we're teaching, information is often presented to students in a wide range of modalities, such as spoken lectures, handouts, pre-recorded videos, etc. Students will vary in their abilities to interpret and understand information depending on the format and their personal skills. Providing information to students through multiple means of representation means allowing students to self-select the medium that best suits their learning style. So one way to provide multiple means of representation is to provide any information that's in your class session via multiple formats. So if there's a presentation element of the class, also making a copy of that presentation available via handout or digitally, such as through the course management system or a LibGuide. Another option is to make digitized versions of archival materials used in class available after the session. Obviously, this is a lot of work, but some students might need more time to process new information than is possible in a single class session. Digitizing primary source material used in class allows them to further examine the items on their own time, and it can also facilitate the use of assistive technologies. So students with vision impairment can, use their computer to zoom in. Students can use screen readers if it's something that works with that. Finally, multiple means of action and expression. For many of us, our interactions with students are one-shots, not graded semester-long courses. And I find that to be incredibly freeing as an instructor who's trying to integrate UDL into my pedagogy. So this third guideline is the idea of providing students with a range of pathways to demonstrate their mastery of a topic. This allows students to really focus on the content versus getting bogged down on things like grammar and having legible handwriting. And that's not to say that those things don't matter, but our learning goals when teaching with primary sources are usually much more based on the experience of working with the item, not the writing style or the output. So a great way to implement this principle is to offer students the opportunity to choose how they respond to the primary source. This can start with something as simple as allowing students to choose between handwriting response on a worksheet or responding via email or Google form using their phone or computer. Other options can allow a lot more creativity, maybe allow students the option of recording their responses in a video. I had one class where I gave them the option to draw memes, and I got incredibly thoughtful responses from the students who chose that option. So, an important reminder, if you find yourself feeling overwhelmed by everything that you could do to change your teaching, to integrate universal design, you don't have to do everything all at once. While we should endeavor to make instruction as fully accessible to all students as possible, instructors should approach the adoption of UDL as an iterative process. As Rachel McMullen points out in her 2022 article on UDL and one-shots, instructors should view these strategies as a toolkit from which they can select the tools that meet the needs of their student body and work well with their own teaching style. When I first began learning about UDL and working to make my pedagogy more inclusive and accessible, I started with a really small goal. For every one shot I taught that semester, I made a LibGuide that had a copy of any presentation I did and links to either the finding aids or digitized versions of all of the material we used in the class. The feedback I got from faculty and students that semester was overwhelmingly positive. I had no idea how often students wanted an easy way to relocate the materials from a class. And while it was a large outlay of work for that semester, much of my instruction is repeated year after year, so those LibGuides need only small edits now that they've been created. So a few reminders before I open up this to a group discussion. The TPS community values state that we nurture and create a community that is inclusive of all, and we achieve this goal through our choices in language, tone, and general demeanor. We will respect the variety of perspectives in this discussion, and understand that everyone brings with them a unique perspective that is valuable, and we'll actively listen to each other and engage thoughtfully with one another. So with those considerations in mind, what ideas do we have as a group of ways to implement UDL when teaching with primary sources? Because we have so many TPSers here today, I'm truly overwhelmed by how many of you have interest in this. I've set up a Padlet that we have here. And so that the link has been in the chat. And then if you want to go ahead and add your ideas under the 3 headings, I'll share them out loud here as they are added. You can also share in the chat, or if you're really eager to talk to all 149 of us, you can go ahead and raise your hand and I'll unmute you. I do see a question in the chat. Someone who works in the museum space is not familiar with LibGuides. Can I speak more to this? So for those of you not familiar with LibGuides, it's a SpringShare product where you can make very easy customized like websites where you can link to resources. So a similar objective could be achieved really just with any like basic website editing things. You could just, but LibGuides is used pretty broadly across higher education and in libraries. Okay. Okay, so for those of you who've never worked with Padlet before, you can just click the plus sign under each heading, and then it will allow you to make a post. So you can do that. And you can also then add comments on other posts. Okay, so I see a few comments already under multiple means of engagement, ensuring a range of materials in your sessions where possible. Definitely really great to have as many options as possible for students when that is possible. And then never select specific people to respond to an activity. Always point to the table of people and ask for one person from there to speak. As someone with a lot of anxiety myself, you guys have no idea how anxious I've been about this all morning. I definitely appreciate that response. And someone gave a shout out to Padlet, say allow for low anxiety engagement, right? We're able to engage here anonymously, which is really great for students. And then another one of us just said that it's important to test our digital tools ahead of time for accessibility and if they work well with screen readers. For example, Omeka can be good or bad for digital accessibility. It's a really great point. I've also had very mixed experiences with LibGuides and screen readers, which is disappointing because it is such an easy platform to use. So yeah, we've had a bunch of things added under multiple means of representation. So one person said that they give students a chance to write down the collections we use, and then they follow up with the professor via email with direct links to the finding aids. And then another person said that they host small sessions in their archives, no more than 9 students at a time. And if they have enough time at the end of the session, they'll show them how to find the digitized materials on the website. And let's see, another person said that they use LibGuides to write out a brief version of the lesson plan with examples and links to what I need them to use. That way students can tune back in if they zone out, or students who miss class can see. I think that is a really great point about students who miss class. I know the school where I work, we have a lot of student athletes. And then also, in these post-COVID times, we'd rather students not come in if they're sick. So giving them the opportunity to still engage with the material. Another person said they have a pre-session module in LibWizard that they present the info via video. I then reiterate that same intro info at the top of the in-person session. So that's another great opportunity. A lot of students really like viewing videos instead of reading material. Clarify any archival vocabulary in a handout. Students can keep referring back to in the session and after. So that is a really good point. So that is on the official UDL guidelines, is to make sure you're not using jargon. It's really easy for us to just drop into that language of saying finding aids and collections, and students don't necessarily know what those things are. And another one of us said that they include links to digital resources such as Online Archive of California in handouts to students. They can look up and contextualize the material they are working with. So that's a really great idea, to include resources beyond just your own repository. Turning on the auto-generated subtitles in PowerPoint if doing slides. They work well in an in-person setting, and those with audio processing issues and English as a second language students will thank you. I provide students with a bibliography of the collection used for their own reference, and then sharing the slides at the start of the session with a bit.ly link or shortened URL so students can pull them up at the start of class to follow along as needed. Our students can be really great about using technology in class in order to engage with the material. Wow, a lot of great ideas about non-worksheet options. Moving over to multiple means of action and expression. So people have mentioned ideas such as zine making, lino cut workshops, historical role-playing games, which I am now obsessed with that idea. Thank you. So another person said that they recommend having students warm up into the creative work. For some folks, nothing is more intimidating than being asked to draw on the spot. And that's a great point. So this is about having it as a multiple means of action and expression. So having that artistic option for the students who are more interested in that, but then also, providing there are going to be students who just want a traditional worksheet where they say like, this is the creator of the object and this is what I learned from it. So giving those different options is a great idea. And another person said creating social media posts like a Tumblr or an Instagram, TikTok content can be a fantastic assessment tool. I think it's a great way of meeting our students where they are and where they're comfortable working. Another person suggested to design more shorter activities so that students have opportunities to lean back into engagement with the content if they need to lean out briefly. So this also can help break up the class for the instructor. They can pace themselves better. So that is a great idea. I think also sometimes students just don't click with a specific item sometimes. So having multiple activities gives a chance for them to find the thing. Someone posted that for teaching more complicated topics, they're experimenting with doing less on a topic, but over multiple sessions to allow time for consideration and depth. And I think that's a great idea, especially if you could get the instructor on board with that. And so another person said, not specifically in the library archive setting, once I invited students to organize information via brain maps and present them. They're so creative and we're able to about the information in a different way. I think that would work really well in an archives and library setting, thinking about how we organize a collection when we're processing it. It's kind of like doing some mind mapping. Another person talked about doing zines. I would love for people who've done zines to talk about how you handle like things like glue sticks and markers and art supplies in the reading room. Just as someone who has like a fear of glitter. So if anyone has any thoughts about that, I'd love for them to add that on the Padlet. Oh, someone just put in the chat that they do zines using Canva. That's a great idea. A lot of our institutions may even have institutional Canva accounts, and our students are really used to working with it. Another person posted that they have students collaborate and design posters on big sticky sheets. And another person said that that's very similar to using Jamboard, since it allows the option to draw or write in response. And then another person suggested working on curating an exhibition based on the materials shown. I love that idea because there's so many different elements to exhibition curation. Like, you have the actual selection of materials, you have writing the captions. And so there's all different opportunities for students to engage with the different aspects of doing that work. Okay. I'm going to pop back over to multiple means of engagement because I think we've had a bunch of additional comments over there. So someone mentioned using Mentimeter, which they saw at a previous TPS Fest as a warm-up activity. Slido is another way that students can engage with material. Someone else mentions Nearpod. I've never used any of these, but I'm excited to look at them all. Okay, let's see. Someone suggested allowing students to engage in open conversation that isn't highly regulated or regimented, allowing the conversations around the topic to flow organically. I think that's great advice. Early on in my teaching, I had a supervisor who told me I had to be more comfortable with silence and less trying to get students to answer things right away. So definitely trying to make things more casual. I always try to tell students that they don't have to, or that they can talk amongst themselves while they're looking at things. Offering materials in different languages, primarily English and Spanish. That's a great idea, especially if you have materials in multiple languages. If you have a lot of international students who attend your school, I know that I would be much more comfortable reading 18th century handwriting that's in English than in another language, as a native English speaker. Someone said if you're going to show a video during the session, making sure the captions are on by default and that they're accurate. Don't make students ask for captions. That's a really great point about making sure that students don't have to ask for these accommodations. Students are not always, they don't want to put themselves out there. And so thinking ahead of time of what the accommodations are that students might need and trying to address them ahead of time. Another person said they're planning to try out gamification through using phones this year, hoping this will allow engagement without much pressure. And someone mentions Kahoot as an option. I know my 10-year-old uses Kahoot at school and gets very into it. Having a clear outline of the session is very helpful for students because they know what to expect. That's a really great idea. So making sure at the beginning of the presentation, you have a agenda. That also allows students, if they need to step out, to know when it would be a good time to do so. Someone said creating plain language, larger print, easier to read versions of panels used in one of their programs to make finding the information easier for students. Yes, thinking about the accessibility just of your visual design and things. So I, even in the presentation today, I used a font called Lexend, which if you're not familiar with it, it was designed to be very readable for people with dyslexia and other reading-based issues. And so it's always tempting to make things look really pretty, but it's also really important to make things easy for everyone to read. Another person said they've tried to do flipped learning. Students prep before class to discuss in the class, and it hasn't always worked very well, especially with undergrads who don't always do the prep beforehand. And someone responded, that they've had more luck with that when the faculty member assigns it. Definitely, that's been my experience as well. And then another person said yes, when students actually get points for assigning. That's been my experience as well, is students aren't always great about doing pre-class work if there's not a reason for them to do it. Another person has an archives podcast. It covers topics we often teach on. So it's a great ready-made way to prep students on various topics ahead of class. That is an incredible idea. And I'm very impressed by people making podcasts out here. Another person said that they had a class where the instructor wanted them to talk about the process of archiving. And so rather than just telling students what they do, they made flashcards and let the students put things in the order that they think they go, which was cool because then they got to tell the students stories about when things went in the order they put them in. It was very interactive and fun to see the students puzzle through our work. They really got a sense of how much work it is to get something into an archive. Icebreaker questions, very underrated. Asking what is the oldest thing you've touched? It generates great discussion and makes students less nervous in the archive. That is a really great idea, especially if you're going to be showing them something super old in that class today, right? When using paper reproduction handouts, encouraging students to mark them up with pencils to help them make sense of them. Works in digital form too. And another person said throwing some unexpected items in the items list, using, for example, mid-19th century fashion magazine pages for sessions, exhibitions on the history of a specific family. Yes, unexpected items definitely are a lot of fun for students. I'd love for people to jump onto that and talk about some of the really crazy things that they've pulled to take students by surprise. Yes. Okay. Check that I'm all caught up on the chat. Yes. Okay, hopping back over to multiple means of representation. You guys are coming up with amazing ideas today, so I am really excited to with all the stuff we're generating today. Okay, someone said they've started adding pronunciations for key people's names in the sources in a setting where students could pick a person to explore via a primary source. I've seen students selecting someone with a trickier name that in earlier sessions they may have shied away from because they didn't know how to pronounce it. That's a great point. Another person said that they print out the finding aids and print out a QR code with a direct link to the finding aids so students can engage with them that way. They're kind of small on a phone, so students like being able to see both versions. QR codes are, who knew that they'd come back around and they'd be really great again. This may be off topic, but does anyone know of any resources, plugins to make finding aid PDF outputs more user-friendly? I think that's a big barrier for a lot of researchers. Even I struggle with it. That's a great question. I hope if anyone has some solutions, they can pop that in. You know, we've all had the finding aid that we've printed out and been surprised when it was 30 pages long. Another person said giving students discussion questions on a worksheet while also reading them out loud. Yes, so allowing students to read while they're also hearing something at the same time. It's that multiple pathways to the material, which is really important. Okay. Okay, hopping back over to multiple means of action and expression. And someone shared that a student last year did a final project where they created an archive for an imaginary 1960s commune, and it was amazing. Um, so they made a physical archive. So that is a really neat idea. Um, that is super cool. Okay.